My name is Madeline Hartley. I am 34 years old. And the moment that split my life open happened on a Tuesday night, in the rain, outside a restaurant I had never been invited to. I was walking back from the pharmacy 2 blocks away when I saw them through the glass. The restaurant was called Birchwood. It had warm yellow lights and small white candles on every table. The kind of place you take someone you are trying to impress. Jordan was sitting by the window. My husband of 6 years. He was laughing. Not the polite laugh he gave at office dinners, not the tired laugh he gave on the couch after long days. This was a real laugh, open and easy and full. The kind I had not seen from him in a very long time. Across from him sat a woman with dark hair and a red dress. I knew her face immediately. Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend from before we met. The woman he had once called just history. Then Jordan reached into his jacket, pulled out a small velvet box, and slid it across the table toward her. She opened it. Her hand flew to her mouth. Inside that box was my grandmother's bracelet. I raised my phone, took one photo. I turned around and walked away without saying a single word. I called Jordan 4 times on the walk home. 4 calls. Each one rang and dropped to voicemail. His voice on the recording sounded warm and familiar. I did not leave a message. I could not find words that fit inside a voicemail box. By the time I got home, my hands had stopped shaking. That surprised me. I expected to be falling apart. Instead, I felt strangely quiet inside, like a room after all the furniture has been removed. Jordan came home 40 minutes later. He was calm. That was the first thing I noticed. How completely calm he was. He set his keys on the hook by the door. He loosened his tie. He walked over to where I was sitting on the couch and kissed my forehead like it was any ordinary Tuesday. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Rough night at the office. Hendrix pushed the quarterly review to tomorrow, so we were all stuck going over numbers." I studied his face while he said it. The way his eyes moved. The way his shoulders sat. The way he reached for the remote like a man with nothing to hide. He was good at this. I had not known until that exact moment just how good he was. "Okay," I said. Just that. He never asked why I was still sitting in my wet coat. 2 nights later, Jordan and I sat across from each other at our kitchen table eating the pasta I had made. He asked about my day. Told him. He nodded and smiled in the right places. Then, during a quiet moment, I mentioned that I thought we had planned to visit his parents the weekend before last. He shook his head slowly. "No, Maddie. That was the weekend before. You're mixing it up again." Pause. I was not mixing it up. I had a reminder on my phone. I had texted his mother about it. "I'm pretty sure it was the weekend before last," I said carefully. He smiled. Patient smile. The kind a teacher gives a slow student. "Babe, you do this sometimes. You get the timeline confused when you're stressed. It's okay." He said it gently. No anger, no frustration. Just soft, steady certainty that my memory was wrong and his was right. I looked down at my plate and did not argue. But that night I checked my phone. The reminder was still there. The text to his mother was still there. I had not been confused at all. I lay in the dark beside him for a long time, listening to him breathe, understanding something new and very uncomfortable about the man I had married. Jordan's mother Diane called me on a Thursday afternoon while I was at my desk at work. Diane and I had always been polite in the way people are when they share someone they both love but do not fully trust each other. "Madeline," she said, her voice smooth and warm. "I was just thinking about you both. How are things at home?" I told her things were fine. She made a small sound, halfway between a sigh and agreement. "I worry about Jordan sometimes," she said. "He carries so much. The pressure at work, all his responsibilities. He needs a calm space to come home to. I hope you're both giving each other grace." She said it like advice. But it did not feel like advice. Felt like a message. Like someone had given her a script and she was reading her lines very carefully. He needs a calm space. That phrase stayed with me long after the call ended. What had Jordan told her? Why was she calling now, out of the blue, to talk about his stress and my patience? 6 years of marriage, and this was the first time Diane had ever offered unsolicited guidance about how to treat her son. Something felt coordinated. I just did not yet know the full shape of what was being built around me. On Saturday morning, I went looking for my grandmother's bracelet. It was a thin gold chain with a small pearl charm she had worn every day of her adult life. She gave it to me the year before she passed. I kept it in a blue velvet pouch in my nightstand drawer. The pouch was there. The bracelet was not. I pulled the drawer out completely. I checked under the bed, inside my jewelry box in the bathroom cabinet. Nothing. I told myself I had moved it and forgotten. But I knew I had not. I went downstairs where Jordan was reading. "Have you seen my grandmother's bracelet? The gold one with the pearl?" He looked up. "Isn't it in your nightstand?" "No. It's not there." He frowned, a perfectly constructed frown, just concerned enough. "You probably moved it somewhere and forgot. You know how you get when you're distracted." There it was again. "You know how you get." I nodded and went back upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed holding the empty blue pouch. I had seen that bracelet in the velvet box at Birchwood. I had seen Vanessa Cole open it and press her hand to her mouth. The bracelet was not lost. Had been taken. And now he was calmly asking me to doubt my own eyes. The following weekend, our friends Petra and Marcus held a dinner at their home. 8 of us around a long wooden table with good wine and easy conversation. Jordan was wonderful that night. He refilled glasses without being asked, remembered small details about everyone's lives, and laughed at the right moments. I watched him the way you watch something you are trying to memorize. Or maybe the way you watch something you are beginning to see completely differently. Toward the end of the evening, a neighbor of Petra's stopped by and stayed for dessert. Her name was Cora. She and Jordan apparently knew each other vaguely through work circles. They exchanged a brief hello. But later, while Jordan was in the kitchen helping with dishes, I saw Cora glance toward the hallway where he had gone. Then she looked at me. Just for a second. Just a flicker. Then she looked away and picked up her wine glass. It was not a suspicious look. It was something quieter. It was the look of someone who knows a thing they believe you do not know. A look that said she was watching to see how much I understood. I smiled at her pleasantly. But I filed that look away carefully, like a receipt you are not sure you will need but cannot bring yourself to throw out. On a Wednesday morning, 11 days after the restaurant, I stopped at a cafe near Jordan's office to pick up coffee before a meeting of my own nearby. The cafe was called Lemon and Rye. I had been there maybe twice before. I was waiting for my order by the window when I saw her. Vanessa, standing on the sidewalk outside looking at her phone. She wore a camel-colored coat and her dark hair was loose. She looked unhurried, like someone exactly where she had planned to be. Then she looked up, directly at me through the glass, and she smiled. Not a surprised smile. Not an awkward how strange to you smile. Slow, deliberate smile. The kind that carries a message. The kind that says, "I see you. And I am not afraid of you seeing me." I picked up my coffee when my name was called. When I looked back through the window, she was gone. I stood there for a moment with the warm cup held in both hands. Jordan's office was 1 block away. Vanessa had been standing outside a cafe 1 block from his office at 8:40 in the morning, smiling at me like she owned something I did not yet know was missing. This was not coincidence. People do not find each other this precisely by accident. I had never been the kind of wife who checked her husband's phone. I believed trust was the floor a marriage stood on. But the floor had already shifted underneath me. I just had not fully admitted it yet. Jordan had left his tablet on the kitchen counter one evening while he showered. Picked it up. I told myself I was checking the weather. But I looked at the message app. And what I found was not messages. It was the absence of them. Entire threads had been cleared. The conversation history between Jordan and several contacts was simply gone. Not archived. Deleted. I checked the call log through our shared phone plan account on my laptop. 3 weeks of records had a visible gap. Outgoing calls to a number I did not recognize had been removed from the log. I only noticed because the data usage did not match what was shown. When Jordan came downstairs and saw me at the counter, he glanced at the tablet. His expression shifted, barely but enough. "Looking for something?" he asked. "Just checking the weather," I said. He nodded. Then he picked up the tablet and walked back upstairs with it. That night, he started an argument about how I had been distant and suspicious lately, and how much that hurt him. I listened and apologized. And I wrote down every single word afterward. I met my closest friend Bria for lunch on a Friday. She was the kind of person who did not say what you wanted to hear. She said what you needed to hear, even when it was uncomfortable. I told her everything. The restaurant, the bracelet, Diane's call, Vanessa outside the cafe, the deleted messages, the way Jordan kept gently suggesting my memory was unreliable. Bria listened without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her fork and looked at me carefully. "Maddie," she said, "the memory correction, the calm explanations, making you feel like you're the confused one, there's a name for that." I looked at her. "It's called gaslighting," she said. "Emotional gaslighting. It's when someone makes you question your own reality so they can control the story." I shook my head slightly. Not because I disagreed. Because hearing the word out loud made something real that I had been trying to keep abstract. "He's been doing it quietly," Bria said. "So quietly you almost missed it." I drove home slowly that afternoon. I kept thinking about the word. Gaslighting. A slow, patient rewriting of someone's reality. I thought about every moment Jordan had gently suggested I was confused. And I realized it had been happening long before Birchwood. I had just never had a name for it before. About 3 weeks after the restaurant, Jordan came home in a noticeably warm mood. He brought flowers, yellow tulips my favorite, and suggested we plan a weekend away together. He said we had been drifting and that he wanted to reconnect. He said it with soft eyes and a gentle voice. The old version of me would have felt relieved. Would have thought, he noticed, he cares, everything will be okay. But something in me had already changed. I had learned to listen not just to his words, but to the timing of them. Why now? Why flowers on a random Thursday? Why sudden warmth after weeks of growing coldness? I smiled and said yes to the weekend idea. I told him it sounded lovely and asked about dates. He relaxed visibly. His shoulders dropped. The look of a man who believed his plan was working. But I was not agreeing because I believed him. I was agreeing because I had decided something important during the drive home from lunch with Bria. I was not going to confront Jordan on emotion alone. I was going to watch. I was going to observe him from a careful distance and let him believe nothing had changed. The tulips were beautiful. Put them in water. I said nothing that actually mattered. I started keeping a small notebook. A plain black one from a drugstore that I kept in my work bag where Jordan never looked. Every night before bed, I wrote down what I had noticed that day. The pattern that emerged over the following 2 weeks was not dramatic. It was quiet and methodical, which somehow made it worse. Jordan had 3 late nights in 1 week. He said 2 were work-related and 1 was drinks with a colleague named Felix. But Felix had posted on social media that same night at a birthday gathering somewhere else entirely. Felix was not at drinks with Jordan. Diane called twice more. Each call was brief and pleasant. Each one found a way to mention how hard Jordan was working and how important it was for a wife to remain supportive. And Vanessa appeared again. Not in person but in a detail. Marcus, from Petra's dinner, mentioned offhandedly that a woman with dark hair and a red coat had been asking about Jordan at a recent mutual friends gathering. He said it like it was nothing. He had no reason to think it was anything. But I wrote it all down. Dates, times, inconsistencies, overlaps. Slowly, steadily, a shape began to form. Jordan bought me earrings the following month. Small gold hoops. Pretty and simple and thoughtful looking. He also made dinner one evening. Pasta from scratch, candles on the table, and spent the night asking me questions about work and my friends and things I cared about. He was attentive and present and genuinely interested seeming. The surface of it was objectively kind. But kindness without honesty is not love. It is management. I recognized exactly what was happening. Whenever the gap between his two lives grew too wide, he would close the distance with affection, like adjusting a thermostat. Keep the temperature in the house comfortable enough that I would not go looking for the source of the cold. I accepted the earrings with a genuine smile. I ate the pasta and said it was wonderful because it was. I laughed at his stories and held his hand across the table. And I thought about Bria's word. I thought about the bracelet. I thought about the notebook sitting in my work bag. He had no idea that while he was managing me with earrings and candlelight, I was quietly building something he could not charm his way out of. Every kind gesture was one more piece. Every warm evening was one more date I could record. On a Monday afternoon, I drove to Jordan's office building during my lunch break. I had told myself I would not do this. It felt like something a desperate wife does in movies. But I was not feeling desperate. I was feeling methodical. I walked through the lobby and asked the receptionist if Jordan Hartley was available. She checked the system and gave me a careful smile, the kind people wear when they are about to deliver unexpected news. "Mr. Hartley stepped out about an hour ago," she said. "He had a lunch appointment." "Of course," I said easily. "I forgot he mentioned that." I turned to leave. A man stepped out of the elevator. I recognized him from the company website. A colleague of Jordan's named Bryce. "Looking for Jordan?" he asked pleasantly. "Yes. Do you know who he had lunch with today?" Bryce shrugged. "Some client, I think. Woman. Someone he seemed pretty familiar with, actually. They left together." I thanked him and walked back to my car. I sat in the parking garage for 4 minutes before starting the engine. A woman he seemed pretty familiar with. I did not need to ask Bryce for a description. I already knew exactly who was sitting across from my husband at lunch. Diane called again on a Wednesday evening. Jordan was in the other room. I stepped into the kitchen to take it. This time her tone was slightly different. Still smooth, still pleasant. But underneath the warmth there was pressure I had not felt in the earlier calls. She talked about Jordan's emotional sensitivity and how he had always struggled under stress. Then she said something that stopped me mid-breath. "I just want you to know, Madeline, that Jordan has been carrying some difficult things lately. I hope you're not adding to the weight he's already under. A wife who creates conflict during hard seasons can do real damage to a marriage." I let the silence sit for a moment. "What kind of conflict are you referring to, Diane?" "Oh, nothing specific," she said quickly. "Just generally. You know how men like Jordan need steadiness." I told her I understood and appreciated her concern. I was warm and agreeable until the call ended. Then I stood in the kitchen and thought carefully. She had said, difficult things he's been carrying. Not work stress. Not general life pressures. Difficult things. As if she knew exactly what they were. Jordan's mother was not offering marriage advice. She was running interference. And she had been doing it deliberately from the very beginning. I found the receipt by accident. I was searching for the warranty card on our coffee maker, going through the junk drawer in the kitchen. And there, folded between a furniture catalog and an old takeout menu, was a small white receipt from a jewelry repair shop called Caldwell & Sons. It was dated 6 weeks ago. The item listed was gold chain bracelet, clasp replacement and full polish. Jordan had told me my grandmother's bracelet was probably misplaced somewhere in the house. He said it like a man stating a calm, unconcerned fact. But 6 weeks earlier, before the bracelet ever went missing, he had taken it to a repair shop and had it professionally cleaned and restored. He had not found it on impulse and given it away sentimentally. He had planned it. He had quietly removed it from my nightstand, had it repaired, and then presented it to Vanessa in a candlelit restaurant while I stood on the wet pavement outside with a pharmacy bag in my hand. I photographed the receipt with my phone. I placed it back exactly where I had found it. I closed the drawer and went back to making coffee like absolutely nothing had changed. But my hands were steadier than they had been in weeks. 'Cause now I had paper proof. I built a careful timeline across 2 weeks of quiet evenings at the kitchen table after Jordan went to bed. I used receipts, calendar entries, location tags on old photos he had posted publicly, and timestamps on emails where he had copied me on household matters. What I found made Birchwood look almost minor. The restaurant dinner was not the first time Jordan had seen Vanessa since she returned. It was simply the most visible. 4 months earlier, Jordan had attended what he called a networking event on a Thursday night. I had not questioned it. A dinner he described as a work thing with finance people. Happened 6 weeks after that. I had not questioned that either. But the networking event was at a hotel rooftop bar. A mutual contact had posted photos from it on a public social media account. In the background of one image, slightly blurred but recognizable, were 2 people at a corner table. One was Jordan. The other had dark hair and a very familiar silhouette. The restaurant was not where it had started. It was where Jordan had grown comfortable. Comfortable enough to sit by the window with the lights on, in full view of the street, no longer caring who walked past. He had stopped being careful because he thought he had me managed. Something shifted in Jordan around that time. The warmth he had been performing started fading at the edges. He became shorter with me, not cruel exactly but impatient, like a man who had stopped enjoying a role he was very tired of playing. He started using a particular phrase during disagreements. "You're being irrational, Maddie." Not loudly, not angrily, just stated like a calm diagnosis he expected me to accept without question. When I asked a simple question about his plans for an upcoming weekend, he sighed heavily and said, "Here we go. Every time I make plans, you treat it like an investigation." I had not treated it like an investigation. I had asked what time he would be home. Another evening when I said I was feeling distant from him lately, he looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Maybe you should talk to someone, Maddie. Therapist. Because I think some of what you're feeling is coming from inside you, not from anything I'm actually doing." I nodded slowly and said that was probably a good idea. Later that night, writing in my notebook, I recorded his exact words. He was no longer just rewriting my memory. He was beginning to rewrite my mind. And he did it with the gentle confidence of someone who had decided I would choose to believe him over myself. I ran into Marcus at the grocery store on a Saturday afternoon. He had been at Petra's dinner. He had mentioned the woman in the red coat who asked about Jordan at a recent gathering. We talked for a few minutes about ordinary things. Then, because he was kind and did not realize he was handing me something important, he said, "Hey, has Jordan mentioned running into Vanessa Cole lately? She's been around a few of our circles. Seems like she moved back permanently." Kept my face easy. "Vanessa." "Yes, I think he mentioned bumping into her recently." Marcus nodded. "She's been back for months, actually. Since spring maybe. Seems like she's been reconnecting with a lot of people." He paused. "She and Jordan used to be pretty close, right? Before you two got together." Said yes. "A long time ago." He moved on to talk about a football game. I responded appropriately. But those words played on a loop inside my head. Back since spring. Month. Not weeks. Vanessa Cole had been back in the city for months, and Jordan had said absolutely nothing to me. Not a passing mention. Not a casual "I ran into someone from my past." Complete silence. I was not the last to know something had happened. I was the last to know everything had already been happening. I stopped reacting. That was the most important decision I made. And I made it quietly, alone, on a Sunday morning while Jordan was at the gym. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook and looked at everything I had collected. Photos, receipts, timeline, Marcus's words, Bryce's words, Diane's calls, the deleted messages, the bracelet repair receipt, the photo from the hotel rooftop event. I was not a woman in chaos. I was a woman with a folder. I stopped asking questions that might alert him. I stopped showing any hurt during his quiet corrections of my memory. I stopped reaching for him at night in the small, hopeful way I still had been without fully realizing it. I let the house feel normal. I cooked dinner. I asked about his day. I laughed at the right moments. But underneath that ordinary surface, I was building something with quiet, steady hands. I made copies of every piece of evidence and stored them securely at my office. I began noting which parts of our shared life Jordan never managed. Insurance accounts, home warranty, shared subscriptions, all vendor contacts. Things I handled without being asked. Things he had never once thought about. I was not planning revenge. I was preparing a careful, documented, irrefutable exit. The argument happened on a Tuesday night. It started over something small, a bill I had not yet transferred. Jordan's voice tightened. I stayed calm, which seemed to frustrate him far more than anger would have. Then, in the middle of his frustration, he said, "I think you already know this isn't working, Maddie. I think we both know." I looked at him steadily. My heart was beating faster, but my face stayed completely still. He opened his mouth again. And for one long, unguarded moment, something real pushed through the performance. He said, "I've been trying to figure out how to." Then he stopped. His expression closed like a door being shut firmly from the inside. He looked away, picked up his phone and said, "Forget it. I'm not doing this tonight." "Doing what?" I asked. "Nothing. You're twisting my words. You always do." I did not push. I did not beg him to finish the sentence. But I had heard those 7 words clearly and completely. "I've been trying to figure out how to." He had almost said it. Not from guilt. Not from love. From pressure that had been building somewhere I could not quite see. He was planning to leave. He simply had not decided the cleanest way to do it while keeping everything he wanted intact. I laid every piece of the picture flat in my mind and finally let myself see the whole shape of it. Diane's calls were not concern. They were preparation. She was softening me, making me feel like any conflict was my fault, so that when the eventual confrontation came, I would already believe Jordan's version, that I had been difficult, unstable, too much to handle for a reasonable man. Vanessa was not a coincidence from his past. She had returned deliberately. The bracelet was not a sentimental gesture. It was a signal, a promise that said, "I am choosing you," delivered with my grandmother's gold on her wrist. The deleted messages, the cleared call logs, the late nights, those were not carelessness. Jordan was careful. What I had found were simply the edges he had not trimmed cleanly enough. Me. I had been the foundation he stood on while he built something else. I paid the bills he forgot. I managed the accounts he ignored. I remembered his appointments and covered his gaps without ever making it an issue. He was not just having an affair. He was replacing me. Quietly and methodically, with his mother running interference and Vanessa waiting patiently for the handover. He had planned to walk out and needed me calm and slightly confused until the moment he was ready. He had underestimated me in every possible way. I made an appointment with a family law attorney named Patricia Owens on a Thursday afternoon. I told Jordan I had a dentist appointment. He did not ask which dentist or what time. He never had. Patricia's office was on the 14th floor downtown. She had sharp eyes and a calm voice, and she listened to everything I said without writing a single note until I had completely finished. Then she picked up her pen. I showed her the photograph from outside Birchwood. The bracelet repair receipt. The timeline I had built. The phone records gap. Screenshots of our shared financial accounts. Balances, contribution history. And all assets in both our names. She asked clear, direct questions and I answered each one without emotion, the way I had practiced quietly on the drive there. When we were done, she looked at me and said, "Mrs. Hartley, you have come very well prepared." I told her I had recently learned the value of documentation. She outlined the legal steps clearly. I listened to each one carefully. We discussed timing. We talked about what I should and should not do before we moved forward officially. I left with a folder of information and a follow-up appointment already on the calendar. Jordan was watching television when I got home. I made tea and sat beside him. He put his arm around me. Let him. And I thought, he has absolutely no idea. It started quietly and then all at once. Jordan had a dental appointment scheduled through our shared insurance account. The confirmation email came to my address because I had always managed that account. I did not forward it. He missed the appointment. He had a car registration renewal processed through the home management email I maintained. I had always handled it automatically. This time I did not. The renewal lapsed. A package he was expecting had been arranged through a delivery app linked to my account. I removed my login. The package was returned to the sender. His dry cleaning had been managed through an app on my phone. Set up years ago, maintained quietly ever since. Cancelled the pickup. None of these felt dramatic. None looked like deliberate action. They looked like simple oversights from a busy wife. But they were the first sounds of a structure beginning to loosen, because I had been the structure all along. Jordan mentioned the dental appointment with irritation. They said they sent a confirmation. I never received it, I said simply. He frowned and reached for his phone, unsure where to even begin looking. That was exactly the point. He had no idea how many invisible threads I had been holding. He was about to find out one at a time. Jordan had a major work presentation the following week. He mentioned it over dinner with the quiet tension of a man who needed everything to go smoothly. For 4 years, I had organized his quarterly presentation materials without being asked. I knew which folders held which files, which template he preferred, which client data needed pulling together beforehand. I did it automatically because it was faster than watching him scramble. This time I said nothing. I did not offer. I did not quietly open my laptop and begin sorting his files. I let the days pass. The night before the presentation, he came to me. Maddie, have you seen the folder with the Hendricks account files? I thought I saved them to the shared drive. I don't think I have access to that drive anymore, I said. They updated the permissions last month. You'd need to check with your IT team. His face tightened. He spent an hour on the phone trying to piece it together himself. Later, after he went to bed stressed and underprepared, I sat alone in the kitchen. Every bill was current. Every important document was either secured or being quietly transferred. Every invisible thing I had carried for 6 years was now becoming very visible to him. Not because I had announced it, but because I had simply stopped. He was only beginning to feel the full outline of what I had always been. Jordan came home on a Friday evening and found me at the kitchen table with my coat on and my bag at my feet. 2 envelopes sat in front of me, one addressed to him, one from Patricia Owens's office. He looked at them, then at me. He sat down and said nothing. I could see him calculating which version of himself to use. The envelope from my attorney explains the legal steps already in motion, I said. My voice was steady. The other lists the accounts I've separated and the arrangements already made. I was angry, I continued. I stopped being angry around the time I found the bracelet receipt and understood how long this had been planned. The front door opened. Diane walked in. She looked between us with a composed expression. Madeline, let's discuss this calmly. Everything is documented, I said. Including your calls. What you said in each one. I kept notes. Her composure flickered once. Then her face went very still. Jordan had come home expecting tears or accusations, something he could manage and redirect. He had not prepared for a woman who had already made every move before he knew the board had changed. I stood and picked up my bag. I was never the unstable one, I said. I was the one holding everything together while you made other plans. Then I walked out into the cool evening air. Coat on. Bag over my shoulder. Hands completely still. I had not screamed. I had not broken anything. I had simply stopped. And it turned out that was the most powerful thing I had ever done.